She was self-possessed, she was very confident, she rallied her troops very well. In a sense, it was a great performance, but it was rather easy opposition. Jeremy Corbyn was obviously having great difficulty delivering what on paper were perfectly good lines, but getting no reaction from his own side whatsoever.
Is that indicative of how the Labour Party is at the moment?
It is. I think we learned a little bit more from yesterday about the Labour Party than we did about the Conservatives. We learned that the Conservatives have now rallied round. They've decided that Theresa May is the best option, whether or not they wanted Brexit, whether or not they wanted Michael Gove or Boris Johnson as a leader. They've decided now is their opportunity to go on the attack against Labour when Labour is at its weakest. Labour, on the other hand, was frankly in disarray on its own benches in terms of a performance at Prime Minister's questions. Jeremy Corbyn has always struggled to take command of that situation. He never really liked it in its traditional form, but he now doesn't have his own troops backing him up. And everybody knows, and of course Theresa May reminded everybody, that he is now facing a challenge from the great majority of his MPs, but probably not from the great majority of his own troops outside Parliament.
We'll talk a little more about the Labour Party situation shortly, but just to stay with Theresa May for the moment. I mean, we say she did well, but I mean, she's a fairly long-standing and an accomplished performer in the House, but it's still different being the Prime Minister, isn't it?
It is, because you have to take control of all areas of policy, and immigration was a good example of that yesterday. She found Eurosceptic MPs questioning her about whether she was committed to her policy of getting immigration, net immigration, down to under 100,000, when her Home Secretary, her new Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, had seemed to bring that promise into question and wasn't prepared to commit to a figure. Theresa May got hold of the issue and said, yes, we are still committed to that figure, although it may take some time. Now, that was a very polished way of dealing with the issue, satisfying the backbencher, but without embarrassing her own cabinet minister too much in public, although I think in private Amber Rudd may be getting a reminder of what government policy is.
We've also seen Theresa May making her first trip and meeting her first counterpart with Angela Merkel. I mean, publicly, they were all smiles, weren't they?
They were, and this is a very difficult situation for all the national leaders involved. Here you're going to see an awful lot of shadow boxing over the next few months. At the moment, European leaders will be very, very reluctant to give any ground to Britain publicly, to offer Britain a role in the single market, for example. And they'll be very keen to get Britain going out of Europe to activate Clause 50 of the Lisbon Treaty as quickly as possible, so as to show Eurosceptics around the rest of Europe that is not going to be an easy ride. On the other hand, Theresa May wants to show that she's going to take it at the pace she wants, she's going to get what she wants out of it, in order to keep not only the Brexit side of her own party, who are still a little bit sceptical about whether she'll follow through on her promise to make Brexit, but also the people in her party who didn't want to leave and who are very worried about leaving the single market, and therefore who want to see the strongest possible relationship retained. Nobody will want to commit themselves too hard, and nobody will want to make concessions too early in this process. So what is said now will be very much the opening gambits in a discussion, which is going to go on for at least 2 years.
If she's going to have a private word with Amber Rudd, what might she be saying to Boris after his first foray into international diplomacy? There he was with John Kerry, there he was with the American journalists, and if we're to believe what we saw and read, it was not a great day for him.
It was not. You only had to look at John Kerry's face. John Kerry, a Vietnam War veteran with a long record in public service and in appearances at press conferences, visibly shocked by the harshness of the questioning that Boris Johnson was facing and the difficulty he was having in giving answers. Boris Johnson has still not yet managed to find a way of convincing people who are listening to him that he's being serious. And that is very much to do with tone as well as to do with content. He, of course, has supplied a great deal of ammunition over the years to people who want to present him as being an extravagant and unrealistic character. And that's difficult, particularly for a foreign secretary who is the most senior diplomat in the country. I suspect that not many words need to be said between Theresa May and Boris Johnson. They both know the position they're in. Theresa May is in the position that Boris Johnson would have liked to have been in. Boris Johnson is in a position he didn't expect to be in. And he is now being tested very hard. And I suspect this will be kill or cure for Boris Johnson. He will find a way of turning his charms and his talent and his intelligence to good effect, and in which case Theresa May will be perfectly satisfied, or he will be exposed as being not up to the very, very demanding job of being Foreign Secretary and will be moved on. I suspect that the reason that Boris Johnson has been put in that position is that although he, rather like Theresa May, was a Remain campaigner with great reluctance, I suspect Boris Johnson, as we knew from his very opening remarks in the campaign, was a Brexit campaigner with great reservations. And he will try to preserve the strongest possible relationship between Britain and the European powers as he possibly can. He will keep a weather eye on the people like Liam Fox, for example, who are very, very keen, hardline Brexiteers. So he's part of a spectrum of opinion, and he's being tested on his personal characteristics. I think when they have private conversations, Theresa May and Boris Johnson probably don't have that much small talk to make.
Just a final thought. We started off talking about Jeremy Corbyn and the pressure he's under. Parliamentary Labour Party don't want him, but it seems that the membership does. There was Angela Eagle as the stalking horse, left it open for Owen Smith. Is he going to make a serious challenge? Are all these people who are signing up for £25 a time, are they going to ensure that Jeremy Corbyn stays in the job? Because if he does, the Labour Party are just going nowhere fast, aren't they?
Well, the most recent evidence is that Jeremy Corbyn is still the preferred option amongst Labour members. A poll of Labour members, as well as we can have one, showed that he had 54% of support. And interestingly, it didn't matter who was up against him or how many people were up against him. It was 54% for Jeremy Corbyn and 46% for everything or anybody else. The supporters of Owen Smith are often quite open about this. It's ABC, anyone but Corbyn. This is a referendum on Corbyn's leadership. And Owen Smith is not the best known Labour MP. He's not the most experienced, but he is a more mainstream figure, and he can represent a plausible challenge to Jeremy Corbyn. Once that challenge has been made, then the Labour Party could move on in the view of his supporters. But it doesn't look as though the membership of the Labour Party are ready for that yet. They have to make a decision now between giving up the right to choose the leader, which effectively removing Jeremy Corbyn would be, because they'd be saying, because the Parliamentary Labour Party didn't approve of him, they accept they can't choose him. Or, on the other hand, do they insist on having a leader that the vast, vast majority of Labour MPs and probably the majority of Labour voters and potential voters don't approve of? That's a very difficult decision for the members of the Labour Party to make. And we just had 180,000 people join or rejoin the Labour Party, so we don't know quite what their opinion is. That's going to be a fascinating outcome for a neutral. It's going to be a very agonising outcome for a member of the Labour Party.